This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. We've been making cheese in Wisconsin since before we were even a state, which may be one reason why we win so many awards for it. It's what happens when a whole state dreams in cheese. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Welcome to the Grape Nation, your weekly wine journey. Our guest is Markus Altenburger. We'll talk to Markus about Blaufränkisch, Austria, and a lot more. I'm your host, Sam Ben-Ruby. Stay with us for the Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We bring wine to the people. Markus Altenburger's family has been farming in Austria since the 16th century. Markus took over the family farm in, help me pronounce this, Jois, in Burgenland in Austria, about a half an hour away from Vienna, over a decade ago. He views himself as much as a grower as he is a winemaker, making low-intervention organic wines. Burgenland is well known for their Blaufränkisch, and to quote Markus, Blaufränkisch is my passion, and he's making some of the best. Markus, welcome to the Grape Nation.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So we are talking to Markus. This is kind of fun. Live at the Character Festival in New York. Let me explain, everyone. Character is the world's leading wine festival and community showcasing organic, biodynamic, and natural wines and farming practices of Central and Eastern Europe, which is certainly, where Austria fits in. All right, so Markus, let's get started. Let's get people a little context. Correct me if I'm wrong, but your family has been farming in Austria dating back to the 16th century?
Yes. You have to imagine Austria back in this epoch was part of a big empire, you could say.
Right. Different than the way we know it.
Different than it's now, way different than it's now. And our part has been the western part of Hungary, actually. It's only Austria since 100 years or so.
Ah,
yeah.
Interesting history.
And my family came between the Turkish wars because the emperor needed some Catholics to live on the country, and so they were farmers from the beginning, and of course there was wine.
So, did they always grow grapes? Was it always grapes, or was it fruit orchards or plants, or basically?
When I grew up, we had a mixed situation of agriculture. And in my very early year, I still remember the chicken run around in our courtyard, and we had a few pigs that were for our own consumption and so on. So it was like a kind of, in Austria you would call Bauernhof,
nice.
Farm situation.
Yeah.
And it crystallized from that wine would be the thing.
So that was my next question. When did the wine thing crystallize? I mean, when was that? That wasn't in the 16th or 17th century. When did that happen?
This was much later. This was a decision my father had to take when he was understanding that in the 90s, the agricultural structure was changing. So everything like growing cereals and grains, the farms went bigger and bigger and bigger. And there was two ways, whether to grow largely or to focus on wine. And I think in all the family, the passion was definitely for wine then.
Lucky for you. So that was, you said, in the 90s?
Yes.
So kind of technically, it's the wine part is fairly young. you have enough years of vines and making wine, but
No, I mean, wine was always there and always played a major role, but unfortunately, we don't use the other farm things anymore.
So I'm curious about this because you're very meticulous about how you do things. When they started making wine in the 90s, you were about how old?
Depends on which part of the 90s, but
Middle. We'll go in the middle, okay?
yeah, let's say 15.
Okay, so you grew up around that and things were starting to happen. Eventually, and I think it was only about a decade ago, 10 years ago, you really got involved with the project. I'm curious, when you got involved, what kind of farming practices and what kind of condition was the land in? Was it fine, or you really had to make some changes?
Of course, it was a very different situation than it is now. So my parents didn't farm organically,
They didn't.
and
But were they using a lot of
like
pesticides,
herbicides? No, they weren't. No.
But it wasn't organic.
So no, but the soil were healthy. That was okay. But and also my father was not the most technical guy in the cellar, which I appreciate a lot. So he didn't use too many chemicals. So that's also something like I never did. I never.
So that's an interesting thing you said. He wasn't technical, which in a good way, he didn't manipulate. But in the other sense, did he kind of know what he was doing? Like he was able to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And in contrast to me, he went to a school and knew what he was doing. I was experimenting when I started.
Well, I want to talk to you about that. Two things. One's a leading question, and then it's kind of what you're talking about. Was it always your desire, and did you think your path was going to be working in wine and at the family winery, or everything just happened the way it did?
It wasn't planned.
It wasn't.
Especially not
so
planned
like when
this.
did you realize?
You have to imagine. I have to say a few things about this. You have to imagine in the mid 80s when I was, or at the end of the 80s when I was a small boy going to school, the Austrian wine scene was down. And my parents, my grandparents, they all encouraged me to go to school.
It wasn't a good business move for you to go into wine.
Not at all.
So
and they seemed like they were willing to kind of protect me from making the same mistake. And
so what was the path you were looking at? Finance, economics?
I was studying economics,
okay.
but I wasn't finished with it, and it was already clear that I needed to work with wine.
You knew.
Yeah. So I took a job.
So it was in your heart.
It was in my heart. I never got really away from it.
Without your parents twisting your arm, right? It's like a little of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Maybe if they would have expected me to take over, maybe then I would have gone the other way,
Right.
Young people
you
are
never
like
know
this.
how it works. Like rebellious or contrarian
Yeah.
or whatever. So it's nice that somewhere inside of you knew you would come back to the family thing. And you mentioned this before. We know a lot of winemakers that have fancy viticulture and enology degrees, right? You have none of that.
I have
right?
none of that.
Was it because you didn't have time? You didn't want to? I mean, it wouldn't hurt. It obviously didn't hurt.
I never felt like I had to. I did a program from the government, which is needed if you want to be a winemaker. And in this course, we learned only about technical measures.
Oh, so you got some basics from that.
Yes, something I had to do. And I was quite happy that I didn't do like the education that was available back then, because it was dealing a lot with the vinification process. And for me, vinification is quite simple. You have healthy grapes, you have healthy yeast structure, they will ferment in the one or the other way. So my focus was on
it's
other
like,
things.
what's all the distraction?
Yeah.
This is how you do it, right? Do you think and I think you may have answered the question, not having that education, not getting caught in the weeds, Do you think that influenced how you make your wines today?
Yes.
A more direct, simplistic, right way to do it?
Yes, for me, this approach of non-invasive winemaking and call it low intervention winemaking whatsoever, it was the logical way for me because I didn't know all the tricks.
Right.
So I was always working with natural yeast. I was always trying to have the quality from outside, from the fields, from the vineyards, and not controlling it in my cellar.
Right.
And I used to work for a winery, a huge place in my area, for 4 years before I started my own wines.
Were they doing thoughtful winemaking, or not as much as the way you do it?
They did. They had consultants from all over the world. They were investing a lot of money, so they flew in people from France, from Germany, and so on. So I could see what's going on.
4 people, 4 opinions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And they were focusing on anything but Blaufränkisch because the French grapes were in the focus. So it even
they didn't give a crap.
They didn't give a
about
crap.
indigenous.
No,
they
not
wanted
at all.
to push what they were comfortable with.
They wanted to make the best copy of Bordeaux, the best copy of Burgundy, and this encouraged me even more to go for the Austrian beauties.
So that's an interesting point. I'm just curious because you would know. Would those grapes, would Burgundy, Pinot Noir, or Bordeaux varietals, would they have grown well in that area? Or you have to plant what works well?
There are some examples of great Pinot Noir, of course.
Right. Austria, Germany, they're starting to make really good stuff.
But I think, especially on the long run, we will face the problem with the intense heat in summer. That I don't think that Pinot is going to work.
Hard to manage in the vineyards.
Hard to manage in the vineyard, and also Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon will, on the long run, pick up too much sugar, equals alcohol.
It wouldn't be a good representation of the grapes.
I don't think so. It's going to be, and I didn't want to make like 15% alcohol wine, you know?
Yeah, that's the opposite of what you're doing. Did when you were a kid and as you got older and over a decade ago when you jumped into the, winemaking and everything, was your dad doing that? I mean, was he any kind of influence? Who was making the wines then? Was it him?
Yeah, sure. And when in my first starting years, he was a great support and great helper. So I did.
What about teacher? You felt that you wanted to do it differently, and when you got there, you did it?
Yes, somehow.
Okay.
And I wouldn't speak of a teacher, but if you grow up with this, like in a natural, native kind of way, that you see what's going on, which things are when to do in the vineyard, and
that's what he offered you.
Yeah,
because he was very tied into that.
This goes into your DNA, and you don't have to learn it anymore.
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful for this.
Yeah, that's important. So Austria, Burgenland, and Blaufränkisch, you can't deny, have come into their own these days. People know what it is. There's great examples of it. It's a great wine. Tell me, set up for me as we continue in the conversation. Tell me about, how do you pronounce Joyce again? Joyce. Tell me about that region and your vineyards. Talk, quickly, and I don't want to get too nerdy, but what kind of climate you're dealing with. I know the soils are specific. You have some lake effect. And then we'll get into, Blaufränkisch, the varietal, and how you make it. But tell me about,
I try to make it as short as possible. Like, I could talk about this all day.
I know.
So the area is beautiful. We have a hillside next to a lake, and all the vineyards pointing towards this lake. On top of the hill, there is a forest that supplies with cool air, which is floating down from the hills, and then we have got the warm air streaming up from the lake. We have 2 major soil types. One is schist soil, that you find on the higher altitude parts of the area, and we have limestone in the middle part and in the foothills. And this is somehow logic, because the whole area used to be in prehistoric times underwater. It was a sea, an ocean.
Yeah.
And the scientists say it might have looked like the Caribbean, with small
Isn't
islands.
that crazy?
Yeah. I like this idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
a lot.
kind of cool. Now, schist is schist slate?
Yes.
It's a kind of slate.
It's like it's crystalline mother rock.
So when
I
you
think
talk
is the-
about
the-
sites, are you talking about literally you go this side,
Yeah.
there's schist, and
Yeah.
if you go a quarter mile away, it's a limestone
You
site?
don't go a quarter mile away.
It's right there?
You throw a stone and it's a different terroir.
Is there limestone on top of schist, or?
There's limestone on top of schist, yes.
Okay.
And but it's on sea levels. It's the schist is up and the limestone is down.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's sort of, natural.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. There's a reason when you think of Wisconsin, you think cheese. Cheese is a huge part of Wisconsin's history and future. In Wisconsin, the state of cheese, the tradition of cheese-making excellence began 180 years ago, before Wisconsin was recognized as a state. Immigrants traveled to settle in this lush green hills of Wisconsin, bringing their cheese-making traditions with them. These storied skills, combined with the freshest milk available, created a cheese-making culture that is uniquely Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 1,200 cheesemakers, many of whom are third and fourth generation, continue to pass on old world traditions while adopting modern innovations in cheese-making craftsmanship. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
We're talking to Markus Altenburger. He has his eponymous winery in Austria. I was at Character this past May, and we got on a bus every morning and visited a lot of wineries. And one thing I noticed is the commitment in that region towards thoughtful farming, meaning organics, biodynamics, low intervention, seemed to me more than almost anywhere else. I mean, am I right about that?
I think so. And only 2 days ago, during a small conference here with Caractère, I heard that we have more than 25% of our organic vineyards in Austria.
Which far exceeds
Everything
most other
else.
regions.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the number one in Europe even. And I think that is something, there is a high responsibility among the winemakers, and I think also people, they live that way. So we want to consume organic.
Your kids are
fruits.
running around the vineyards.
Yeah.
You're not spraying those vineyards.
No.
Yeah.
And why should I, if I buy the best vegetables which are grown organically, why should I farm differently than
Right.
myself?
Right. It's just interesting that it's that, region. It's the people, the winemakers, they believe in that,
Yeah.
so they are a leader in all of that.
And what I also understood is that, or what people understood, is that there is no coming forward anymore with techniques, with cellar. But you can improve the quality of the grapes if you farm them organically. You bring in a different level of quality.
Well, I said in the intro, you're as much a winemaker. I mean, you're as much a farmer as you are a winemaker. I don't think you'd be happy making wine if you weren't happy with what came out of the vineyards.
Exactly.
And I think everyone thinks that way. And I think that's a great direction, and hopefully it influences other regions. All right, let's discuss your fascination and passion with Blaufränkisch. So we had a little history there. Family's been around a long time. Parents, were making wine. You grew up around it. You started taking things over a decade ago. How does this Blaufränkisch thing happen? Was that always in the back of your mind? Did you kind of stumble on it and go, this is awesome?
No, it definitely came when I was like, as I told you before, I was working for this winery, that was only dealing with French grapes, and this raised my interest for Blaufränkisch a lot. And when I left there in 2006, I it was clear for me which path it would go, and also I think that, you know, Burgenland is a place of variety with so many different grapes and so on.
Well, you make Neuberger, Chard, Gruner,
Yeah.
all these other grapes,
Well, this
and
is
those are
historic.
important grapes.
Yeah, this is historic that you had many different whites, but also we only had one red, and this was Blaufränkisch, like forever. And you know, you wouldn't go to, if you're drinking a Burgundy wine or Côte Rôtie, for example, you wouldn't know, you wouldn't ask which grape it is. And I think this is something I would like to see in the future of our region, that it's like automatically clear that it only can be a Blaufränkisch if it's a premium wine. Yeah.
Well, I think we're on our way. I think festivals like Caractère here in the U.S. and there, I think winemakers like you that could get good press and make extraordinary wines, you know, sometimes it takes time, but, you know, I think what you're talking about is going to, you know, happen. So would we say the grape is an indigenous grape to the area?
I'd say so.
So
but
why
there are many regions around.
why is it so suited to grow in that region? Is it the slate and the limestone? I mean, you can't make champagne well unless it's on, you know, chalk. You know, why is that area such a good area to grow?
I think that Blaufränkisch works very well with any type of mineral soil. So I have more Blaufränkisch.
So, like a sandy, loamy soil is void of minerals versus a slate or a limestone, right?
Yeah, you could say this. I think.
Yeah. So this complements it.
Yeah, and Blaufränkisch has the ability to transfer the soil into taste. And
is much or more than other grapes?
I
It's
think
really
so.
a transmitter of the terroir?
Because if you compare it, for example, with Cabernet Sauvignon, this has a very particular grape taste, you know, and
Right.
and the Blaufränkisch, it's
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's not so intensive. The aromatics are much more silent, not so screaming.
The nuance.
The nuance is much more refined. But I also think that Blaufränkisch is not the best grape for intensive winemaking. So
what does that mean?
If you over extract it, if you put it into oak barrels, if you do any types of concentration.
Are people in effect doing that? Or they know better?
This was the standard vinification like
early on,
yeah. Like
so it
15
changed,
years ago.
more restrained, lower alcohol.
This is what's happening now, yeah.
So just so people can kind of close their eyes and imagine, you know, what they're going to taste. Tell me about some of the characteristics of the grape and wine. You know, obviously you alluded to moderate alcohol, moderate or low. Tell me about power, complexity. You know, what are the things that best describe?
Yeah. If you're looking for a dominant aroma, I would say cherry.
Okay.
Yeah, dark, ripe.
More darker
cherry.
and ripe than bright.
Yes.
Okay.
So not really sour cherry. Maybe sometimes in a cooler year, but cherry.
Not bright and not sour.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then there is some cheering acidity at the finish of a Blaufränkisch. So it's nothing that you know, silencing you down. It's something that lightens up your energy.
Nice.
And there can also be a lot of tannins because the skin is quite thick. And that leads us to a very complicated discussion, which we always having, style.
So you have to manage the tannins to get to the style that you want?
So for us, this organic farming and stressless farming for the plant was crucial to have a very good ripeness of tannins. Because what I don't like is harsh tannins, green tannins. I don't like it in the wine. So
what'd you say, green?
Yeah, so if
which is
it's
vegetal.
vegetal, yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
So you're saying by farming organically
yeah,
gives you a better opportunity to make the type of wines that you want and control the tannins.
definitely, because it's helping you to get a physiological ripeness and not only a sugar ripeness.
Right.
The sugar ripeness comes with stress, and the
Right.
physiological ripeness comes with taking the stress off the
Right.
plant.
Right. Sometimes you have to balance between power and delicacy. Where does Blaufränkisch fall in?
Um,
Both?
both. You can have powerful Blaufränkisch wines that still are very delicate
With proper management
with
of the
proper
tannins gives you power. How do you attain the delicacy?
yeah, not over extracted, not over extracted. And I also think that the power in a wine doesn't only come from extraction and alcohol. It also can come from a depth of layers of aromas, you know. And I think this is, if you then have a Blaufränkisch with some vineyard age on the right soil, then you don't need to do so much.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the reality. All right, let's talk about specifically some of your Blaufränkisch, which is your expression of that region. We talked about the climate, the soils. Now let's talk about, what you do. So I picked out three. Maybe it's the only three, but you make a Jungenberg,
Yeah.
single vineyard, old vine. That's a slate wine. You make the Gritchenberg, which we have a glass and we'll talk about in a second. Single vineyard, old vine on limestone. And then you make a Vom Kalk, which you introduce oak into it. Or
Not quite.
Not introduced, but is it aged in neutral oak? Or
All of them are aged in oak.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, okay, let's start with the Jungenberg.
Well, let me set you up. So
Okay.
You have an opportunity, which I think is fun for a winemaker, to work with different sites and different soils.
Yeah.
Which is why you're making, these three different wines. Tell me how it gives you an opportunity to, make these different type of wines.
I think this is also something intriguing about the grape itself, that it shows different terroirs, and then it makes fun playing with it.
Right.
So if you think of a schist soil like on Jungenberg, you get a much darker expression. Tannins usually take a little bit longer to ripen, and on limestone, as the Gritchenberg, there you get a real smooth, soft, very long.
The tannins are softer?
Yes. So silky and slightly salty as well. So then it's like what you prefer, You go for the expressive fruit of the schist,
right,
or you go for the elegant, soft limestone version, and both is possible, and it's fun blending those.
So, how does the Vom Kalk differ from those two?
The Vom Kalk isn't. It is a terroir wine, of course, because it's like growing around my village, and I think it represents really the classical aromas of Joes. It's this cherry aromas. Like we even have a special cherry sort in my village. It's called the Joeser Herzkirsche,
which means what?
The heart cherry of Joes. So and if you grew up by chewing on those fruits and you find those aromas in the wine, it's just
that's
great.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's part of the surroundings and all of that.
So in the Blaufränkisch vom Kalk, it's different vineyard plots with different vineyard age and also with different selections, Marsal and clones. So it's like a not the most complex wine, but it has got some depth, and it's the one where you just sit down and enjoy a glass, maybe even during the day. Why not?
I don't know how people describe them. It's not the entry level wine, but it's the more accessible wine.
It's the more accessible wine. It's the wine that has versatile ways of using it. Just drink it, just combine it with food. You can do it.
You mentioned 3-4 descriptions about sites and all that. What's the soil? Is it a mixture of slate and limestone, or is
From kalk. Now, kalk actually means limestone.
Oh, right. So it's a limestone.
So it's
So is that the softer tannin, easier because of the limestone?
So it's limestone, but also some vineyards are a mix of loam and limestone. So this brings in a little bit more fruit. So yeah.
Tell me about the ageability of Blaufränkisch. Obviously, any wine, if you have a better made wine, it'll age longer, than a. Does Blaufränkisch have the ability to age, and does the aging create benefits for the drinker?
So first of all, nobody needs to be afraid to have a bottle of Blaufränkisch in his cellar, because even the entry-level wines.
Do we encourage it? Like drink some, but put some away and drink them later?
Yeah, this is both is possible. So a single vineyard I would put aside for some years, of course.
What happens with age? What does it do to the wine?
It's mellowing, and
the tannins even quiet down a little more.
Yeah, it's mellowing the tannins and putting the acidity in harmony to the rest of it. And if we take a look at the less extracted wine, like at the Blaufränkisch from Kalk, it's also cool to drink it right away, because you have this fresh and precise fruit expression.
Some wines are suited better to drink.
But I never had a Blaufränkisch which was 5 or 6 years old that was already oxidized, Like those wines really can age for some years, yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. So people should, we're trying to get people to understand and know more about Blaufränkisch. If they pick up nice wines, they could lay them down in their cellar and enjoy the evolution of what happens. We talked about acidity. Now, when you talk about acidity, it usually points towards a wine that could potentially be food friendly. Yes. Do you see Blaufränkisch as a food friendly wine, and why?
I mean, half of the answer lies in your question.
The acidity?
The acidity on the one hand side, and on the other side, Blaufränkisch is nothing. It's a subtle aroma, It's not like a Gewürztraminer that jumps out of the glass and destroys everything.
Floral and nuanced.
Yeah. So I like Gewürztraminer.
Me too.
I don't do varietal bashing here.
With Thai food, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Blaufränkisch is much more subtle, much more elegant, and that really can lift a dish, in a certain way. And
so, what are some great foods that are natural pairings for Blaufränkisch?
Yesterday we've been to a very nice place here in New York, to Malo and Son, and they served their burger, which was recommended to me.
Perfect, right?
And so I had our Blaufränkisch from Kalk together with that, with some friends.
That sounds pretty good.
It was the perfect match.
What else? So burgers are good with the right red wines.
Sure, with the easygoing versions. And then we have a long tradition of roasted meat in Austria, and there you can do many things, like with the.
It can hold up to gaminess, rich, red meats.
Of course.
Pork?
Oh, pork I would go to white rather.
Yeah, I would see white, but it would be good with red meat.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap things up. I want to do a few other things. Are you looking to plant or acquire other vineyards? I mean, are you happy with what you're doing now, or are you always looking for the challenge?
I'm always looking for the challenge, but
are sites available or not so easy?
Not so easy. When I started, I had this 1 hectare of Blaufränkisch from my family, and it's not a lot. So I had to plant new vineyards. I had to rent new.
So you have your own vineyards and you contract.
Yes.
Are you comfortable with the control of the vineyards you have that you contract?
No, we work it all ourselves.
You do.
So I don't buy
it's a
fruit.
non-issue.
Yeah.
Right.
I used to buy fruit when I was young, because I had no other choice. But we don't buy fruit anymore, and the farming is the most important thing. So that's only consistent.
Right.
And so we have a very old Selektion Massal on the Gritschenberg.
That's great.
Yeah. So I planted some new vineyards in the recent years, which are just coming now into production. So if
Oh,
you,
wow.
yeah, so
So exciting times ahead.
it's really
So
exciting.
you want
time
to
ahead.
concentrate on that.
Yes, definitely. And if you want to work with Blaufränkisch, you have to be quick because it needs some, for me, yeah, it needs some vineyard age. So plant it young to be happy when you're grown up.
When you say vineyard age, as much as any other grape, like you're not happy until the vines show some age. It won't make the type of wines. What type of age you talking about? 10, 12 years for starters or 20?
No, I mean you can make nice fruit-driven wines out of young plants. It's no question about it.
Okay.
But when it comes to complexity and to what I described before, elegance from depth and not elegance from concentration, then you should aim for 30 plus.
Right. So that's the mark. All right. We are at the Character Wine Festival. Markus is here with his wines and he's pouring them. I've really taken him out of the flow, so I want to get him back to it. But Markus, we're going to do this quickly. We do a thing called the wine list where I ask all my guests 5 questions about their wine preferences. Do it quickly. Don't dwell on it, all right? So what are you drinking now? What's in your fridge at home? What are you curious about? You know, you're not drinking Blaufränkisch all the time. What's interesting you? Any region, any wine?
I'm not drinking Blaufränkisch all the time. I should. I like. Actually, I'm a little bit. Still, I like a lot of French wines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Particularly what?
I
Burgundies, Bordeaux,
Burgundy,
Loire,
Jura, North Rhone, if they're not too extracted. So this is something I like.
Do you look for inspiration when you drink wines, or you don't even think about it?
Actually, to be honest, I prefer to drink wines from outside the country because then it's enjoying a wine and not working.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. We talked about Blaufränkisch having acidity and a good food wine. What is your favorite wine and food pairing? I know you don't eat it all the time, but what works for you? This is the goofiest question of the batch, but you got to answer it.
I've been to a great vegetarian restaurant in Vienna. It's one of my favorite places. It's called Tian.
Spell it.
Tian.
Okay, Tian.
Yep.
And it's all vegetarian.
It's all vegetarian, and they served me a Furmint, which I think it was a little bit volatile even, and the acidity was so strong. And when we first got it in the glass, it was like, oh my God, what is this? And
I guess it cuts through vegetables or something.
And then it cuts through vegetables. Then we had a mushroom, just roasted mushrooms, and it was so perfect. And this was one example for me that I could see what food and wine does if it corresponds well.
So mushrooms are very earthy and hearty. Did you have any green vegetables? Like asparagus and broccoli are tough to pair. Do you remember having any other vegetables with that ferment?
No.
Just that worked well.
Yeah.
All right, so the third question is, and I think we're going to take Tian as one. I want you to tell me your favorite wine restaurants or bar. You travel, so Tian is a good place.
Yeah, in Vienna.
Can you think of another place where the wine service is great and the food?
Yes, definitely. Also in Vienna, you have to go to Mast, M-A-S-T. That's the best place.
Okay.
And those two I can put my hand in fire.
So you come in and out of New York. You know, you're a pretty well-versed traveler. Can you think of a place in New York that's kind of a fun wine place?
Yeah, sure. There are many good places.
Name me one or two. And these are not number 1 and 2. I'm just asking you for suggestions.
Yeah, we are here now at the Rockefeller Center, and downstairs, just next to the ice skating place, is Naro.
Terrific.
And Jonelle works there.
That's the atomic. Jonelle is one of the great people. Yeah. Sweetheart.
So this is a great place.
Great food, great wine. Yeah. That's a good recommendation. And this is not the greatest restaurant neighborhood. And across the way you have Jupiter, which is the King people.
Yeah.
And they do a good job. All right, fourth question. We're almost done. Favorite all-time wine? When I asked this question, I wanted to find out what was the most expensive rare wine you ever drank? I don't care about that. Can you think about a wine during your lifetime that had an impact, an influence, changed the way you thought about it? You know, was it maybe with your dad? Was it on your own? It opened your eyes?
There were many, but
You can name a couple.
if I would mention something that inspired me for my work, it was a 2001 Blaufränkisch from family Ernst Triebaumer from Rust.
Wait, so the name of the winery was Family
Is Triebaumer.
TR?
Triebaumer.
Okay, I'll check it.
Yeah.
But
So-
why was that? Why did that
And
open
the
your eyes?
21 vintage was a little bit rainy, and it came after the hottest vintage 2000 and a very ripe vintage 99. So people were like a little bit critical about the outcome of this. And I bought this bottle, I think in summer 2005, and I understood that Blaufränkisch is not about concentration, ripeness, but of elegance. Maybe because this vintage was a little bit cooler. So this
And
is
it
a
all
wine.
came together.
It all came together.
And it
yeah.
caught your attention.
Yeah.
See, that's the answer to the question. You know, it wasn't the best vintage year or the most famous wine. It's the one that made the impression on you.
Yeah.
Changed the way you thought about it. What was the vintage year again, you said?
21.
21.
No.
2001.
Sorry.
All right, final question. The question is, tell me the best wine around 15, 20, 22 bucks American. Recommend a red and a white. I'm going to change the question a little. If we're looking in Austria for great value wines, like we know, like you said, the Vom Kalk can be less than, let's say, the Gritchenberg. Where are the best values? What varietal or...
I mean,
Because the region is not crazy expensive anyway.
the region is
And
not.
within that,
no,
there are great values.
No, but if you think of great value, a natural wine, you have to think of Klaus Preisinger, of course. But you can also find great wines from Christian Tschida in this price category.
Yes,
So the
Christian's
Himmel of Erde,
here.
for example.
his wines are here
So
today.
this is highly delicate, and yeah,
So the good news is there's some pretty good options.
they're pretty
Quality
good options.
wines by quality winemakers at a good value price.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm not using the word cheap. I'm using you don't have to, 22, 24 bucks. You're going to find a good producer and
You
a
can
good
find
wine.
good producers, sure.
All right. Before I do a quick wrap up, in front of us, we took from your pouring, we took a Blaufränkisch Gritchenberg. Tell me quickly about this wine. What's the vintage?
It's 2019, which I consider as one of the great vintages in the last decade.
Great because it was easy, output was good,
Great.
not crazy challenges.
Great because it was balanced.
Okay.
We had rain in spring and not during harvest, so this is a good thing. And we had ripeness, but still elegance and acidity.
Everything you want.
Everything I want.
All right, so let's do three things. We're going to put this under the nose, we're going to throw it over the tongue, and then we're going to talk about it. So the first thing is, this is the typical Blaufränkisch color, right? Kind of a deep purple. Not a brooding wine, but nice deep color.
Yeah.
On the nose, is this typical Blaufränkisch nose descriptors, or this is...
What is typical,
I don't know. You're the expert. Forget typical. What do you get on the nose here?
I get some cherries.
Right.
I get also this herbal character. Little bit of tea because it used to be like fermented together with the stems. So herbal tea, cherry. It's all
Now
there.
you're doing entire whole cluster or
Oh, this
half?
one, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one is whole cluster.
Yes.
So you're going to get a little of that tea and herbal and all of that.
Yes.
All right. So when you throw it over the tongue, the mouthfeel is, it's like perfect. It's like a medium. It's not thin, not lacking of anything. And it's not overly unctuous. It just feels really nice on the palate,
and I
right?
think it feels like a real wine, nothing that has been made in a
Exactly.
chemistry lab.
This is the way it comes out.
Yeah.
Now, finally, the palate. Are the descriptors similar to the nose? There's a savoriness, right? I guess
say
from
so.
the whole cluster.
Yeah.
Do you get cherries on the palate?
I get a bit of cherries, and I also get this nice acidity to for the finish, and I get some salt.
Yeah, there's a salinity.
Yeah.
That works really well. It's integrated really nice. So this is the 2019 Altenburger Gritchenberg Blaufränkisch. Is this what's available in the market?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Markus, I got to let you out of here. Let me do a quick wrap up and then you're on your way. So if you have a question, suggestion, wine happening, or event, hit me up at samatthegrapenation.com. That's samatthegrapenation.com. Subscribe to the Grape Nation podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your pods. Leave a review if you like the podcast. Subscribe. If you subscribe, Marcus's interview will come right up. Follow us on Instagram at SBenRuby, on Twitter X at BenRuby. You can always get to us with the hashtag The Grape Nation on both. We're on Facebook at The Grape Nation. As I mentioned, we'll post Marcus's wine list. Those answers you gave me, I'm going to post them. And I will also list the wines that we tasted. Markus, if we want to find out more about your wines, where's the best place to go? Website? Social media?
The website is not 100% actual. Social media is we do have an Insta account, which is like.
Is it Markus Altenburger?
Yes.
What is it? Okay. Do you have a personal account, or they're both? No,
it's one account.
Okay.
And I don't.
So the best way to find out what the hell you're doing, where you are, what you're making. You're using Instagram to post that.
And you can also use a new platform that has been created recently by friends of mine. It's called littlewine.com.
Little?
Yeah, like small, littlewine.com.
Oh, nice.
There's like a platform for many wines, and wineries which are shown there in a very attractive way, I think.
All right, we'll look out for that. And like I said, I'll post it so people will have, a hard thing to look at. All right, Markus, I'm going to let you go. Thank you to our guest, Markus Altenburger. I really want to thank you for taking time out of a busy day. Not only you're doing this and then you're blowing out of town in, a handful of hours. Thanks to our engineer, Armin, and everyone at the Heritage Radio Network. I'm Sam Ben-Ruby, and you've been listening to The Grape Nation. The Grape Nation is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network. Food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.